Senator King.
Here.
Senator Creighton.
Here.
Senator Alvarado.
Here.
Senator Hinojosa.
Here.
Senator Hughes.
Here.
Senator Miles.
Here.
Senator Parker.
Here.
Senator Paxton. Senator Sparks.
Here.
Being 8 present, a quorum has been established.
I do.
Members, the purpose of today's hearing is to lay out a bill. Members, as stated on the posting, we will not be taking public testimony today. And let me pass the gavel at this time to Senator Creighton. Okay. Have to gavel down some soon.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 4 and recognizes Senate sponsor Senator King to lay out the bill. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members. I've just got a little bit I've got to go over here. I reintroduced SB 4 on August the 15th, the first day of the special session. Our committee heard SB 4 on Sunday, August 17th, and favorably passed it out. Now, before us today is HB 4, the companion to SB 4 that passed out of the House yesterday. There are some minor differences between SB 4 and HB 4 that I will review with you shortly. It is my understanding that the House Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting drew this revised version of the map with its outside counsel and experts. My counsel has reviewed this as well and concluded that it complies with all applicable law. Now, as I said, on August 15th, I reintroduced Senate Bill 4, which was identical to the bill that the full Senate passed out in the first special session. This committee held a hearing for public testimony on August 17th, and we heard from 42 witnesses. That means this committee has heard testimony over this special and last special, if my math is correct, from 247 people testifying on redistricting. At the conclusion of the August 17th hearing, this committee favorably reported SB 4 out of committee by a vote of 6 ayes to 3 nays. Now, where we're at this morning, on August the 18th, as I said, the House Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting introduced a substitute bill for House Bill 4, which they passed out of committee at that time. The substitute, which is now HB 4 engrossed and before us today, affected 12 congressional districts, including CDs 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, 17, 18, 22, 29, 36, and 38, while maintaining the 5 now Republican-leaning districts, CDs 9, 28, 32, 34, and 35. Additionally, HB 4 slightly changed CD 16 and 23 to move Fort Bliss into CD 16 and the El Paso General Region. And again, what I'm trying to do here is compare SB 4 to the engrossed HB 4 that's before us today. It keeps whole Navarro County, which had previously been split, placing all of Navarro County into CD 6. It was partially in CD 17. It also moved Liberty County into CD 9, where it was previously in CD 36. The House committee stated their overall intent of the changes was to increase political performance in existing Republican districts from the proposed plan. A review of the map, again, we're talking about HB 4 engrossed. A review of the map shows that it accomplishes those goals through fairly minor changes. 9 of the 12 districts affected are Republican performing districts. Again, this is relative to SB4. 6 of which improved their Republican performance in the House substitute. Those are CDs 2, 8, 9, 17, 22, and 38. The remaining 3 Republican districts, CDs 6, 14, and 36, slightly decrease Republican performance, but remain 60% plus Trump 2024 districts. 2 out of the 3 Democrat performing districts, specifically CDs 7 and 29, slightly decrease in political performance for Democrats, but will still strongly perform for Democrats. The compactness also stays the same overall, with some slight changes from the SB4 map. As a reminder, both SB4 and HB4 have 5 districts that now lean Republican in political performance. Those 5 are CD9, Houston, CD28 in the RGV, CD32 in the Dallas region, CD34 in coastal South Texas. At this time this morning, I would ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 4 as engrossed. This would be the map under Plan C 2333, Charlie 2333. I believe the changes that it makes are minor relative to SB4, and that they are consistent with the goals that I've set forth for this legislation. Those goals include 1, complying with applicable law, 2, strengthening Republican congressional performance, and 3, maintaining compact districts. Now, HB4 also corrects a concern that was mentioned by witnesses from the El Paso area in one of our previous hearings and brought up by Senator Blanco about Fort Bliss. And again, what HB4 engrossed does is moves Fort Bliss, or portions of it, the portions they were concerned about, back into CD 16 as requested by the El Paso constituents in testimony and by Senator Blanco. And with that, Chairman, I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Senator King. Members, questions?
Yeah.
Senator Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman King, you know, this map had some significant changes. And there was not a public hearing in the House committee. There's not one here. And I'm just going to focus on now what is my congressional district 9. It has split up the East End community and has paired us with Liberty. What we have in common with Liberty, I don't know. And I don't know how that decision was based, but it seems like, well, no, you said it very plainly. The goal was to create more opportunity for Republican wins in these districts. And I wish that especially my folks in the East End would have been able to come and give public testimony. You talked about one of the goals being to keep districts compact. But if you look at CD9, by extending all the way out to Liberty, it's not compact. Can you talk about that a little bit? CD9?
Well, as you mentioned, CD9 moved into Liberty County. It made it a better performing Republican district, which was one of the objectives. From a compactness perspective, and compactness is a couple of different measurements for that, but even looking at it visibly, it's obviously contiguous. It still is a amazingly more compact than many of the congressional districts that are on this map across the state of Texas. I can tell you that, as you mentioned, that was not in the original SB4 configuration, but it still meets the goals that I had for the legislation, and that's why I brought HB4 before us today.
You said one of the other goals was to create more opportunity for Republican wins, right?
Yes, the intent was to improve political performance, specifically for the 5 congressional districts I mentioned.
And where did you get that idea from?
Well, I think that's been discussed a great deal between all the Republicans in the Senate and in the House, and it's been discussed by the governor, and it's been in the media. I think it's been a very prominent issue even nationally.
Well, it was discussed amongst y'all, but before that, who put the bug in your ear about that?
I first learned about it probably the same way you did, through the media.
And who was quoted?
Well, I heard a number of people quoted.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard congressional members quoted. I've heard White House officials quoted. I've heard Governor Abbott quoted.
Speaking of congressional members, did we have any testimony from Republican members of Congress?
No, and I've specifically not, I have not spoken to, and I've said this before, I have not spoken to anyone in the White House. I haven't spoken to anyone in the Justice Department. I haven't spoken to any members of the congressional leadership. The only 2 congressional members I've spoken to are ones I talk to all the time, and those just happen to be my 2 congressional members and good friends, and we didn't talk in detail about the map.
Okay. Well, it seems like in the regular session, nobody was even contemplating this. Would you agree? In the regular session?
I heard discussions of it before we adjourned, before we sine-died from the regular session.
When was that?
I would say, I don't know, I really don't remember. I just remember during maybe middle of the regular session, I started hearing some discussion about it in the media and among Republicans talking.
That's interesting because this is the first time I'm hearing you even mention that. I mean, because we've talked about it in the hearings, and I don't recall any discussion until President Trump talked about it. And that I don't remember exactly the date of that, but I don't think it was during the regular session. I could be wrong. Maybe somebody can check. Anyway, that's all I have for now. I'll save the rest. I'll have more to say tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, additional comments or questions? Senator Miles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask the obvious question, Mr. Chairman. Why are we not hearing testimony on the substitute map?
Well, as I mentioned, we've already had testimony from over 200 people on redistricting, and then we had 43 people testify just the other day on SB4. This is the companion to SB4, and it's been very common practice in the Senate forever that if it's a companion bill and you've already had a hearing on it and already had a lot of testimony, that you do not have to take public, or do not need to take public testimony again when you're considering the companion in the committee. So the parliamentarian has affirmed this, and again, it's common practice. We do a lot of times every session when companion bills catch up.
Would you agree, Mr. Chairman, 2 things? That one, this is not an ordinary situation, that we're in this rigged district?
I think we're the process we're taking for redistricting in this special session is the common practice that we have taken in every redistricting session that I've been a part of.
Okay. Would you agree that by us voting on a committee substitute on which no testimony can be given or was given in the House, we are actually shutting out even more constituents from this process?
No, not at all. As I said, we've had over 200 people testify during the course of the last 6 weeks or so.
but the substitute is making some changes. Is that correct?
It is different. It is different than the companion SB4.
And would you agree with me that we're not allowing constituents to comment on the differences that you just agreed that we're making?
No, I think anybody, the public portal is still open. Anyone can still file comments about it, and they can, of course, reach out to us. And we're just taking the same process that we use all the time on all different types of bills and subject matters with regard to when a companion bill catches up with the bill filed before the Senate.
Okay, let me move on, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hunter insinuated that the public was lucky that hearings on these maps were held at all. I'm going to quote him. He said, in quotes, "We held 3 public hearings. We are not required to hold those hearings." With redistricting affecting about 31 million people in this state overwhelmingly without their consent, do you agree on that statement, Mr. Chairman?
I think we held 6 hearings in the Senate, and with regard to the 2020 redistricting data on which this is based, I think there's been a total of 21 hearings in the Senate over the course of, well, since 2020. And so I think we've had a tremendous amount of input. I think we had over 3,800 clicks to the online when we were doing our teleconference hearings. And then again, just for SB4 in this special, we had 70-something people, I believe, register to testify, and we had, I think it was 43 give us testimony on the companion to HB4.
So is that true? Are you saying that you agree with him or you don't agree with that statement?
No, I think we've had quite a bit of testimony, and
So you don't agree with that statement?
well, I'm not saying whether I agree with it or disagree with it. I'd have to ask you to read it to me again, but and I didn't hear him say that.
I'll be happy to, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Chairman Hunter stated, "We held 3 public hearings. We are not required to hold those hearings." And my question to you was, with redistricting about to affect over 31 million people statewide, overwhelmingly with their consent, do you agree with that statement?
I can only speak for the Senate. I believe we've had a sufficient number of hearings before the Senate.
Sufficient answer. Mr. Chairman, Chairman Hunter also stated on yesterday that he consulted with counsel to make sure that this new map was VRA compliant. You also stated that you wouldn't vote on a map unless it was the lawyer had told you it was VRA compliant. Do you still stand by that statement, Mr. Chairman?
I do.
Thank you. And 2 more questions, Mr. Chairman. According to the Texas Legislative Council, as of this moment, 38.6% of those voting age population in District 9 is black. In newly created District 9, only 10.2% of the voting age population is black. This is a negative change, Mr. Chairman, of 28.4%. Does that 28.4% drop in black voting population seem race blind to you?
So I haven't looked at any racial data. You mentioned citizen voting age population, or CVAP. I haven't looked at CVAP. I will tell you that CVAP is not really census data. CVAP is an annual estimate. It is very problematic in its accuracy. But this map is based on 2020 data. And again, I haven't looked at racial data myself. I did ask our council to give HB4 engrossed a very good scrubbing. They have reported back to me that it complies with all applicable law, which of course would include the VRA.
So this is the House map, and you're saying that you didn't look at it, Mr. Chairman, before you brought it to us?
I learned about it probably when you did on Monday, when it was presented. I learned about the changes then, and before I took a hard look at it, I asked our council to scrub it and to tell me whether or not it was legally sufficient. When they did, then I tried to do a deep dive into it, and that deep dive is what I tried to relate in my opening remarks.
Okay. So just so we're clear on something, Mr. Chairman, a 28.4% drop in black population in the redo of District 9. It's just coincidental. And that you're saying that this is not race-based.
Again, I haven't looked at any racial data, and I have tried very hard to not do anything that was race-based.
Okay, let's go on to District 18. According to Ledge Council, again, Mr. Chairman, District 18, which hasn't had real representation for almost a year now, would go from 34% of voting age population being African American to 45%. All of this happening while Hispanic votes age population dropped 7.7% from 3.9 to 32%, and the Anglo population dropping 4.7 from 19.4% to 14.7%. Would you agree that it very much looks like, based on the data, that we are just packing African American votings into District 18, moving everyone else out?
I can't respond with regard to racial data. What I can tell you is that I'm told that, or I'm aware that CD 18 should still perform very strong as a Democrat district.
It should. That's a correct statement, Mr. Chairman. Senator King, my objection to this racist rigged districting does not change with this new map. In fact, my opposition gets even stronger because now it's obvious that we're packing Senate District 18, and it's obvious that these maps are actually they're not race blind, as you stated they are, but now there is literally zero opportunity for public to have any input in this map. You break up communities but take no responsibility for them, as my counterpart said, and I will be giving a no vote on this and any other committee substitute that comes before this committee, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Miles. Senator Alvarado, you're recognized.
Thank you. I can't let this go. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that you heard about this middle of the session. But if I recall, I think Lieutenant Governor Patrick on Sine Die talked about, not seeing us till the next regular session. Governor Abbott had talked about, let's get this all done. We don't want to go into a special. And the first reports of anything having to do with this redistricting efforts came on right around June the 9th or 11th. But you're saying that you heard some talk about this in the middle of the regular session. So that's just not jiving for me.
I didn't take notes on the dates, and maybe I'm a little bit off, but I seem to remember discussions, maybe even a little bit in the media, but I seem to remember discussions before the session was over. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking about the period between Sine Die and, the first few weeks of June or something, but for some reason I seem to recall having heard discussions, not that I generated, but I seem to have heard discussions during the regular session. Maybe some of the other senators would remember that as well or remember differently. I don't know. I wasn't taking notes. I wasn't thinking about redistricting at the time, but I think that's when I first started hearing about it.
Well, I can't obviously speak for you, but I would strongly disagree, because when you laid out the resolution for the rules, you mentioned that the only reason we were doing this, because it was asked, and you said because the governor put it on the call for the special, and then there was some reference to the DOJ letter. All of that happened in the special. There was no mention of any of this in the regular session. If so, I can't imagine why the governor and lieutenant governor would be talking about not coming back for a special. Let's get this all done. And then, here we are. So I just want to be clear, because when we're talking about making changes to people's congressional representatives, this is a serious topic. I'm really bothered by this new map, because it's taking my home, my East End community, splitting it and putting us with Liberty County and not having any opportunity for the public to come and address this. And these changes were made just in the last couple of days.
I understand your point. My home is, I think it was during the 1980 redistricting cycle, in which there were a number of court cases and other changes. I think I went through 3 state senators without ever moving in a 10-year period. So I understand, but that just occurs in redistricting. But
When was that you mentioned?
I think that was during the 1980s.
Okay, but that was probably done in a regular redistricting process, not in mid-decade.
No, well, I mean, it's a long time ago, don't remember, but I remember there were some court cases and things moved from, so during that 10-year period, I changed senators. During that 10-year period, I changed congressional members without ever moving. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of redistricting, and we've talked before about how many times I think we've had changes during the interim in maps. I believe, I have to go back and look at my notes, but I believe every redistricting cycle beginning 1960. And so, my home county is split as well, and that's just part of the part of trying to meet the one person, one vote population requirement as well.
Yeah. And I wrote down those years that you mentioned. There were quite a few, but that has been driven by mainly court cases, not because whoever was in the White House said they needed more congressional districts of their party. It's a big difference.
Well, I know in 2003, it was because the Republicans took a majority in the House for the first time since, well, in the legislature for the first time since 1870, and we did redistricting at that time in 2003.
Wasn't that because the courts did it, and then so you wanted to come back and have the legislature do it?
No, in 2003 we did the legislature, because you had a Republican Senate and a Democrat House and a Republican governor. They were unable to pass a House, Senate, or congressional map in 2001. The redistricting board drew the House and Senate map in the 2002 elections. Again, for the first time, I think, since the 1870s, the Democrats lost control of redistricting. And in 2003, in a special session, Governor Perry put congressional redistricting on the call, and we took it up, and I think we went through 3 special sessions, because the Democrats left the state again then as well, and produced a congressional map.
Okay. Well, from what I'm being told and what I'm just reading back, it seemed like it was following the court case and legislature coming back
There
with
wasn't
the
any
new
court case. We just had not done any congressional redistricting in 2001, and tried to do state, Senate and House, and were unable to pass a bill. And so the redistricting board again took up House and Senate, and then we did congressional in 2003.
Okay.
Because we hadn't done it in 2001.
And was there,
Yeah.
did that come from the White House, whoever was in power, or was that something
I don't,
the state leadership and the legislature decided?
I don't recall. I just recall it being put on the call.
Okay. So right now, as it stands, in Congress, there are 25 Republicans and 13 Democrats. Right?
Yes, as
Okay.
part of the Texas delegation.
Okay. And you said that one of the objectives was to create more Republican congressional districts. Why did you feel that was important?
I always feel that's important.
Okay, because now it's going to from 30 to 8. I'm just saying, when is enough enough?
Are you asking me personally? I am very proud of the work that the U.S. House has done, and the President and the U.S. Senate over these past 8 months now. I was very concerned and disturbed with what was done during the Biden administration. And I'm very concerned that if the Republicans lost the majority in the U.S. House, that the that the 2 years following the midterms could be very harmful to Texas and to the United States. And so I want us to maintain a Republican majority and hopefully increase a Republican majority in the U.S. Congress, and that's my purpose for being willing to carry this map.
Well, I think all the work that the Trump administration's been doing, I think all of those issues and policies and bills should stand on their own and let the American people make those decisions and not this rig districting. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado. Senator Hinojosa, you're
thank you.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just have several points and questions, points of clarification. I know Senator Miles asked, it wasn't clear, but the changes that were made in Senate Bill 4 by House Bill 4 in those congressional districts, those voters didn't have a chance to express their opinion after the changes were made. There was no public hearings on that point.
So as far as the Senate, this is the hearing the hearing that we're having today is the only hearing on HB4 engrossed before the Senate. However, it's the companion to SB4, and we've had a previous public hearing with public testimony on SB4.
But we haven't had any on this side, on the Senate side. I know that it gets over-explained, but the point is that I'm trying to make is there was no public feedback or no public testimony on the changes that were made to those congressional districts that came across from the House on House Bill 4 as compared to Senate Bill 4.
My only answer, sir, is that we're following standard Senate process in dealing with a companion bill when it catches up to the Senate bill.
And I understand that, but I mean, it's just a pretty simple question. I mean, no, we didn't have any hearings.
Well,
Pretty much on this changes we made on our Senate bill from House Bill 4.
I understand.
The other one is there seems to be a contradiction between the three goals that you stated as it relates to improving Republican performance and then keeping communities of interest compact. And the reason I say that because I look in Hidalgo County, which that's where I live, in McAllen. You look at Congressional District 15, Congressional District 28, you cut Hidalgo County in half. Not only that, you separate Edinburgh, the university, from the city of McAllen. Even DHR, Doctors Hospital, which has part of their hospital is in McAllen, the other half is in Edinburgh, is split. And if you look at that's, and if you look, you split the city of FAR in the House Bill 4. FAR San Juan Alamo, which is one school district, is split in half. So how does that compare to trying to keep community of interest compact?
Well, first off, you know, if you look at the existing congressional map or the House and Senate map, in trying to do one person, one vote, it's inevitable that a lot of cities and counties are divided in school districts. For one reason, cities and counties and school districts don't all share the same boundaries naturally. But you know, compactness communities of interest has to do with a lot more than just geography. Communities of interest, as you mentioned, can be a city, they can be an historic neighborhood, they can be a school district, but they can also be a water district, they can also be a water basin, they can be a transportation district, they can be an economic district of some sort. They can be any number of things that draw people together in common. You know, I guess I use my home district. My district stretches all the way from far east Tarrant County out into West Texas, and some of those counties have 4,000 people. One of them does 4,000. Another one has just 10,000, and then I have Tarrant County that's a large metropolitan area. Yet they share the same transportation district. They have two water basins river basins that provide the water for most of the entire area that have to work together. They're in the same TxDOT region. I believe they're in the same DPS region. Actually, they share two TxDOT regions. Their economic driver is the same for most of the district, all coming out of the Metroplex area. So there's a lot of things that create communities of interest, besides just the geography of a county or a city or a school district.
Well, all the factors you mentioned are being violated in the way Delaware County was being split. And the communities that I know and I live in all my life, McAllen, you split it from Edinburgh. You split the Pottsville Island School District. It's one school district, and it's split in half. So those are very important to our community and keeping those communities of interest because Congressional 15 goes all the way up to almost San Antonio. The other one happens to be Corpus Christi, Oasis County. There's another county which has been completely split. If you look at some of the neighborhoods, you have
which district are you going to?
That's be District 34, and
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm up with you now.
That district is also split, and that part of the district runs all the way up to San Antonio, and you split the Hillcrest Black Historical Community. You split the Port of Corpus Christi, which is an economic driver that you mentioned a while ago, from the university. So it splits all these communities. They have no relationship to the way the congressional districts are drawn. They go way up north or way into rural counties. They do not have community of interest, same economic drivers, or the same historical roots. So I mean, those are issues that I think are very important to my congressional districts. That now we have to sort of get to know different congressmen and the congressperson. I know the district as well as the one that was previously there. So those are very important factors to consider because my constituents are what I call, they require a lot of help. They require a lot of assistance. So the way the map is drawn for South Texas is not very in the best interest of my community. That's my comment.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hinojosa. Senator Miles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator King, we established previous conversations and previous meetings that the Republican Redistricting Committee is the one who drew our map. We established that, correct?
I don't
National
know that
Republican.
they had any.
You spoke on that previously.
Are you talking about SB4 or HB4 engrossed?
SB4.
SB4, yes, we had talked about that they had, well, so again, I understand they were involved in that. I wasn't involved in that process with them. I adopted and filed the House map when it became stalled in the House. Okay. And so I don't have all the history on how it was drafted.
So let's check off. You established a House map, and that's what you filed, correct?
When the House map stalled in the House, I picked it up and filed it in the Senate.
Okay.
As a companion.
And in previous conversation on SB4, we had conversation on this diocese that the Republican Redistricting Committee is the one who we're referring to draw the map, correct?
Okay, it's my understanding that they were involved in the drafting of the original HB4.
Okay. Have we heard back from the DOJ, Mr. Chairman?
No, I haven't talked to anyone with the DOJ.
Okay. And do you understand, Mr. Chairman, that when black folks and minorities tend to lean Democratic, do you agree with me on that statement? For the most part?
I don't know how to answer that. I think that I hope that people look at issues, and I will just say that I can tell you on the map before us, whether these historically will be, have been Democrat or Republican in performance, but I don't want to speak about someone's political preference based on race.
So you have no idea that black and minorities tend to lean democratically.
So I just want to say that I do not want to take racial data into consideration in my promotion of this map. And what I have looked at and what I'm considering is how areas have historically voted, and I can tell you in any one of these districts whether I think they'll perform strong or weak or split Republican and Democrat.
Well, if you don't want to take that position, then let me make it clear that it is impossible. It's impossible, based on your statement that you made, that you drew the map and you're proud that you've drawn the map for more Republican congressional seats, is what you said to my colleague Alvarado just earlier, that you're proud of that, for more Republican seats. So knowing what I know and knowing what is the obvious, that minorities and African American vote democratically, it's simply impossible to draw those maps race blind that you have done. It's simply impossible, knowing and making the statement that you're proud of the fact that you've drawn more Republican seats in the state of Texas. Okay? But the fact knowing that African Americans and minorities lean democratically, it's simply impossible, Mr. Chairman, impossible to have drawn these maps race blind. And I close.
If I may respond, Chairman.
Senator King.
It's actually incredibly easy to draw a map when you don't take race into consideration, and when you're just trying to meet one person, one vote, and look at Republican and Democrat voting patterns. It's really very easy to draft a map, and frankly, if I'd really wanted to sit down and draw one, I could have drawn one that elected more Republican seats, probably.
May I respond to that?
Senator Miles.
If I can respond to that, if you're taking voting patterns into place, then you know that minorities and African Americans vote Democratic, if you're taking voting patterns into consideration.
All I'm saying is you don't have to look at race to draw a legal map that meets partisan objectives.
Well, if you say you can do that, Mr. Chairman, I find it awful funny that you didn't draw a map, you just took the House map.
I took the House map because it met the objectives that
Which is to gain
I had for a map.
which is to gain more Republican seats. I understand, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any other questions or comments? Okay, at this time, members, we'll take a vote on House Bill 4. Senator Parker moves that House Bill 4 be reported favorably to the full Senate with a recommendation that it do pass and be ordered, not printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Alvarado.
No.
Senator Hinojosa.
Nay.
Senator Hughes.
Yes.
Senator Miles.
Not no, but hell no.
Senator Parker.
Aye.
Senator Paxton. Senator Sparks.
Aye.
Senator Creighton.
Aye.
Senator King.
Aye.
It's 5-3, 1 absent.
There being 5 ayes, 3 nays, and 1 absent, House Bill 4 will be reported to the full Senate with a favorable recommendation.
Pass it back over.
Thank you, members. Is there?
Pass the gavel back to you, Chairman
All right,
King.
thank you. Members, is there any other business to come before the committee? Hearing none, Senator Creighton moves that the committee stand in recess, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you, everyone.
The House will come to order. Members, please register. Have all members registered? Have all members registered? A quorum is present. House and gallery, please rise for the invocation offered by Ron Joy of DPS.
Shall we pray? We praise you, Lord, as you are the God of hope. You fill us with joy and peace as we place our trust in you so that we may overflow with hope. Today we are joined by family members who have lost so much in the recent tragedies. We pray, Lord, that you give them comfort and strength during these difficult times. We pray as this body takes up issues today that will help prevent future tragedies. I pray that you give these members wisdom and unity and joining together with these families to help overcome these difficult challenges ahead of us. Help us, Lord, not to be anxious about anything, rather instead to present our requests and petitions to you in prayer. Guard our hearts and our minds so that only your peace remains. Father, we pray that these public servants here act in humility and not out of personal ambition. Help us all to be considerate and act with the interests of others in mind. I pray that you bless these members, their family, and the work of their hands. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Chair now recognizes the Honorable Richard Raymond to lead us in the pledges of allegiance to the United States and Texas flags.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, please join, and guests, please join in the pledges to the U.S. and Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Chair will now hear excuse for absent members. Please excuse Ms. Gervin Hawkins to attend a funeral. On motion of Ms. Collier, please excuse Representative Campos today and tomorrow because of an illness. On motion of Ms. Howard. Is there objection? Chair is none, so ordered. The following proclamation from the governor, the clerk will read the proclamation.
To the Senate and House of Representatives of the 89th Texas Legislature, second called session. Whereas the people of Texas, through their state constitution, have placed in the hands of the governor the power to call and set the agenda for special sessions of the legislature. And whereas, pursuant to a gubernatorial proclamation issued on August 15th, 2025, the members of the 89th Legislature convened in a second called session to consider the subjects designated in that proclamation. Now, therefore, I, Greg Abbott, Governor of the state of Texas, by the authority vested in me by Article 3, Section 40, and Article 4, Section 8A of the Texas Constitution, do hereby present the following additional subjects to the 89th Legislature, second called session, for consideration. Legislation to impose penalties or punishments for legislators who willfully absent themselves during a session. Legislation to authorize a person to purchase ivermectin at a pharmacy. Legislation relating to a groundwater study of East Texas aquifers by the Texas Water Development Board prior to the issuance of permits or permit amendments by certain groundwater conservation districts. Respectfully submitted, Greg Abbott, Governor.
Following announcement, clerk will read the announcement.
The Committee on State Affairs will meet today upon final recess or during the bill referral period if permission granted in room 1W.14 Agricultural Museum in a formal meeting to consider pending, referred, and committee business. It's final recess or bill referral.
Mr. King for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to suspend the 24-hour posting rule to permit the Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding in a public hearing on Friday, August 22nd, 2025 at 8:30 a.m. in room JHR 120 to consider House Bill 123 by Leilani, House Bill 149 by Louderback.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none, so ordered. Following bills on first reading and referral to committee, clerk will read the bills.
HB number 40 by Schofield, relating to the authority of sheriffs and constable to enter in contracts to provide law enforcement services in certain counties and county financial authority in relation to sheriffs and constables in certain counties. Further, the Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. HB number 192 by Oliverson, relating to the funding of, contracting with, and employment of for law enforcement agencies in certain counties. Further, the Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. HB number 193 by Ashby, relating to the volume of groundwater production authorized through the issuance of permits by a groundwater conservation district. Further, the Committee on Natural Resources. HB number 237 by Guillen, relating to an interstate compact for animal health initiatives. Further, the Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. HB number 238 by Guillen, relating to pest control. Further, the Committee on Agriculture and Livestock.
Members, can I have your attention? Please join me in wishing Representative Lacey Hull a very happy birthday. Members, we are organizing amendments. The House will stand at ease until 10:25. The House will come to order. Please excuse Mr. Perez of El Paso on motion of Mr. Rosenthal. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Members, we're getting ready to go on the calendar. The chair lays out on second reading House Bill 1. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 1 by Darby, relating to resident youth camp emergency plans and preparedness, authorizing a civil penalty.
Chair has Mr. Darby to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, before I begin my layout, I have a full floor substitute for House Bill 1 that was worked on by the Texas Division of Emergency Management, Department of State Health Services, my office, the Speaker's office, and most importantly, those on behalf of the families. It is my intent to lay out the substitute and a separate amendment to address funding. First, then I will be more than happy to answer any questions on House Bill 1 as amended. So with that, I'll offer up this committee substitute.
Following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Darby.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby.
Thank you, members. This is not going to be short. I'm going to ask for a little bit of patience because this bill deserves it, and I want to walk through the substitute and let you read it, answer questions, and then ultimately pass it to the Senate. First House Bill 1 is about one thing: making sure every single youth camp in Texas has a rigorous, professional-grade emergency plan to protect the children entrusted to their care. This bill has evolved significantly from what I filed in the first call special session, and I want to thank Governor Abbott, the Texas Senate, Speaker Burrows, for not only making this a priority for the legislature, but having the faith in me to see it through. Members, this is not abstract for me. I see my granddaughters every time I pick up this bill. By the grace of God, they were picked up at Camp Mystic the very weekend before the floods hit. The very weekend. I have thought about that every night since. What if it had been them? It haunts me, members. But when I speak on this bill and for this bill, I hope I'm not just speaking for myself, but for the lost children, the grieving families who have called us, met with us, and shared their heartbreak and grief with us. I'm presenting this bill for Lainey Landry, who loved playing with slime, eating popsicles, playing cards with her grandparents, and baking chocolate chip muffins with her grandma. For Virginia Naylor, who loved the outdoors, loved her God, and loved her community. For Jane Hunt, adventurous, kind, and always smiling, never wanting anyone to feel left out. For Mary Grace Baker, Hadley Hannah, Lila Bonner, and every life taken too soon. For all the other lost children, who I will address by name in the closing, and for the 12 campers who went to sleep in their cabins, who survived but whose lives are profoundly changed. Members, make no mistake, House Bill 1 is fundamentally a bill about failure. The camp failed these girls. The county failed them. The River Authority failed them. And in a larger sense, their government failed them. In some ways, I know I have failed them. I take this personally. You know, members, in 10 sessions and now I think 16 special sessions, I've never filed a bill on campground safety. I could have, but I didn't. Why? Because if July 4 taught me anything, it taught us that for too long we collectively have become too complacent. Camps became complacent. The local governments became complacent. We all became too damn complacent. I will not make that mistake again. We have a chance now to right these wrongs, to say never again. When the floods hit the camp for these girls, there was no plan. Members, with House Bill 1, there will now be a real emergency operations plan, a plan not pulled off the internet or thrown together in the heat of the moment, but a vetted plan approved to the highest standards that we can muster as a state. We cannot call these once-in-a-thousand-year events, shrug our shoulders, and walk away saying, better luck next time. I will not accept that. I will not take that for an answer, nor should you, not anyone. It's been said that our preparations in time of peace is the greatest predictor of our behavior in times of war. Let me repeat that. We could use this phrase every day on this floor. Our preparations in time of peace is the greatest predictor of our behavior in times of war. In this case, having no plan or procedure or training in place is not an unforeseen outcome. It's gambling. It's gambling with the lives of our campers and the lives of many who work at these campgrounds on the assumption that nothing statistically would happen. I agree that in some historic events, this bill may not have saved every child, but if this effort saves even one child, one little boy, one little girl, that is worth it to me and submit to you. So members, what does House Bill 1 do? House Bill 1 is part of a two-step plan with Senate Bill 1 to create a package of the strongest youth camp safety legislation in the country. When I filed House Bill 1, I knew that there would be changes that needed to be made. Speaker Burrows gave me a mandate, and we a mandate, to pursue the strongest bill possible. In speaking with the families, I confirmed what I believe to be true. The file version is not strong enough. Okay, I said, let's fix it. Over the next week, my staff and I met with all of our state's emergency leaders, and we crafted what is before you. Something that will be a model for other states, empower parents, and ensure that everyone from the campers to the staff are prepared for every conceivable scenario. But make no mistake, this is not an either-or situation. I fully intend to pass, and I hope with your support, pass House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1 to send a message that the state of Texas is listening. House Bill 1 is substituted, requires every resident youth camp in Texas, not profit or for-profit, church or commercial, to create, implement, or submit an annual emergency plan to the Department of State Health Services. Plans must address at least 12 specific emergency scenarios, with natural disasters being just one of the 12. This plan must include lost campers, internal fires, epidemics, serious injuries, unauthorized intruders, and aquatic emergencies. It mandates clear procedures for evacuation or shelter in place, traffic control, staff communication, and notification of local EMS, fire, and law enforcement. It requires minimum hours of pre-session staff training, documentation of completion and instruction for campers and parents on emergency procedures. It ensures plans are shared with local emergency services before camp begins. It ensures campgrounds notify DISHs of all changes in structures and operations to ensure that the plan is updated in real time to account for the camp as it exists, and will fully fund inspectors at DISHs for the first time. It establishes civil penalties for blatant non-compliance with funds directed back to DISHs to cover enforcement costs, and allows for the revocation of licenses for those who do not establish a plan. The bottom line, no plan, no children. The bill as amended also establishes a new multidisciplinary team to work with DISHs to establish the Emergency Operations Plan minimum standards. This includes TDM, DPS, Water Development Board, and many others who will set the terms of the plan and will be free from outside interference and influence. In simple terms, we will create the variables and minimum standards, and the camps will fill in those variables. House Bill 1 is a real plan. This is the plan that TDM DISHs in my office know will hold our camps to the maximum standard while allowing them to create individualized operation to maximize their resources. Once again, House Bill 1 is just one part of the puzzle. Senate Bill 1 by Chairman Perry will end the practice of all overnight camping in a floodway or flood zone, put clear siting requirements on residential structures, and tackle the other critical camp safety issues not presented in House Bill 1. We also have Senate Bill 2, Senate Bill 5, House Bills 22 and 20. All of these bills work together, and I cannot be more proud of the work that our two chambers have undertaken. Make no mistake, this is not just for floods, not even for just natural disasters, but for any unforeseen or emergency circumstance that could harm our children. Not just notes on a chalkboard or lip service to state regulators, but a rigorous plan parents can trust. Before I close on this amendment, I want to thank the many stakeholders, including the campgrounds, who have come to my office proactively and said, yes, this needs to happen. Let's make it work. But I'm frustrated by the opposition based solely on the mentality that any new requirement, even as simple as this, is uncomfortable to the status quo. Like it or not, the status quo changed on July the 4th. If we don't act, we are making the conscious choice to continue to roll the dice with the lives of our children. So yes, members, I'm not going to lie. This is deeply personal to me as a father, grandfather, and legislator who has heard these stories firsthand, as I know many of you have. This is not Darby Bill 1. This is House Bill 1. This is a piece of each of you in this bill, because what we do here sets the standard. Members, I ask you to join me in passing House Bill 1 so no family has to endure what these families have endured. Therefore, members, I move adoption of the substitute.
Following amendment to the amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Darby.
Chair, Mr. Darby.
Thank you, members. This amendment here is is simple and worked on by the Speaker, staff, and Chairman Bonin to dedicate funding to this bill to ensure DISHs can hire and appoint the fleet of professionals to get this running on day one. This amendment ensures the bill is fully funded without needing to make additional changes to Senate Bill 5, which deals with supplementary relief funding more broadly. And I move adoption.
Mr. Darby sends up an amendment to the amendment. It's acceptable to the author. Is there objection? Chair hears none. It's adopted.
Members, I'll be glad to stand for any.
Following amendment to the amendment, Chair recognizes. Clerk, please read the amendment.
Amendment by Wale.
Chair recognizes Mr. Wally to explain the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members, for the opportunity to lay out a very simple amendment, and it gives the parents the information they desperately need. And I want to say to the parents that we're thinking about you, that this chamber wants to act on your behalf to make sure this doesn't happen again. As a father of a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, I'm from Houston, Texas. We had several churches, several parishes bury your loved ones, your little ones. God bless you. And this chamber wants to act in good faith. To honor your babies. Currently, members, there is no requirement for a youth camp to share with parents or guardians when the facility is located in a floodplain. And members, I come with this amendment in good faith. I've done this work in Houston when we've had disasters and floods have ravaged our community, and I've filed similar legislation that this chamber has passed, and actually that the governor has signed as well. So not every parent knows the geography of the area, so notification gives every family access to critical information. Notifying parents doesn't stop camps from operating or place a large burden on the facilities, but it builds transparency. This is the same information we give to homeowners and renters of a flood notification. Particularly, a flood notification is provided to a renter or a homeowner currently under current statute of the dangers of a property being in a floodplain. Families have the right to know if this particular camp is in the floodplain. What happened during the Independence Day flooding was an unmanageable tragedy and every parent's worst nightmare, including mine. Parents deserve to know if their babies are sleeping in floodplains. With that knowledge, they can act immediately when a flood warning is issued. This is not only peace of mind, but life-saving. Lastly, members, I want to thank Chairman Darby and the members of the Disaster Preparedness and Flooding Select Committee for all their work to bring relief to Texans, and I move adoption.
Mr. Wally sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection? Chair hears none. It's adopted. Following amendment to the amendment, clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Ward Johnson.
Chair has Ms. Ward Johnson to explain the amendment to the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, members, this is a common sense amendment that utilizes policies we already have in place in places like hotels. This amendment will require camps with overnight cabins to post on the interior doors of the emergency evacuation, the evacuation map and relocation maps, as well as an alternative route if the primary evacuation route is obstructed. Mr. Speaker, members, this amendment is easy and an effective addition to our overall emergency preparation. You can tell the kids what the plan is, you can tell the staffers, but when they see it every day, it will be etched in their brain. Redundancy is how you teach them what the route is, and this is a way that they can see that map and they can see that there is actually a plan of evacuation. Making these small changes gives parents, camp staffers, and the campers additional peace of mind that even in emergency situations, they know where they can identify a map of an evacuation route and emergency supplies. I move adoption. Thank you.
Ms. Ward Johnson sends up an amendment to the amendment. It's acceptable to the author. Is there objection? Chair hears none. It's adopted. Following amendment to the amendment, clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Howard.
Chair has Ms. Howard to explain the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And sorry, I'm just getting a little. What this amendment does, amendment to the amendment does, is it does prevent the building of sleeping quarters within the 100-year floodplain. I've, like many of you, have witnessed many devastating storms in my lifetime that affected my community and beyond. The 1981 Memorial Day flood here in Travis County, where 13 people died, my husband and I were youth advisors at our church, and one of our youth died in that flood. The 2013 Halloween flood here in Austin, where 5 died in my community. In 2021, of course, Uri, officially 246 Texans died across 77 counties, including 28 in Travis. And of course, now the 2025 July 4th floods, where 10 died in Travis County, and more of our constituents lost loved ones, children, at the Kerr County camps. Like many of you, nothing could have prepared me for the heartbreak and shock I felt when I heard the news about the 4th of July floods here in Central Texas. And to those impacted by these floods, there are no words that I can give you that adequately convey my sympathy. As a parent and grandparent, I cannot begin to imagine the terror, the grief, the loss that you are feeling that day and every day since. I listened to the agonizing testimony from my constituents and other parents. I'm sorry, this is not about me, for sure, I'm sorry. At yesterday's Senate hearing, where they were begging us to pass a bill that would prevent this type of tragedy from happening again. My office has heard from many of my constituents directly impacted by the floods along the Guadalupe River in Kerrville. They reached out to me as their representative, asking what I and this legislature are going to do to prevent this from happening again. This amendment is my contribution to helping all of us find solutions. Simply put, it prevents the youth camps from being built in or along a floodplain where the sleeping quarters are. Had this restriction been in place on July 4th, we would not have had nearly as many fatalities. There are currently 13 summer camps along the Guadalupe River that were built on land prone to flooding. Of those, 3 of the camps had more than 50% of their buildings in the 100-year floodplain, and another 5 had 20 to 50% of their buildings in the floodplain. These camps were allowed to operate under old statutes and agreements that have been in place for many decades. Let me be clear, nobody could have anticipated what happened that weekend, but we could have been better prepared. The fact is, we cannot continue to allow unsafe building practices to continue. The science is clear. Natural disasters and severe weather events are becoming more frequent, are causing more destruction, and are deadlier than ever before. By updating building practices, we can ensure that youth camp buildings used for sleeping are not built in potentially dangerous areas. My amendment would bring HB 1 in line with the Senate's version of the bill, and is a change that could save lives down the line. I urge you to vote with me in supporting this amendment to the amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Pursuit, for what purpose?
Would the lady yield for questions?
General yield for questions?
Yes.
She yields for questions.
Ms. Howard, thank you. I have shared many of your same concerns. When this event happened, I naturally, like all other members, looked at where this issue was most felt, particularly at the one camp. I don't want to name a name, but we know. And I looked at the maps, particularly done by the media, and then I went onto the GIS and I looked, where were these cabins? Why were children kept overnight in an area where floodwaters could come just like that? What I found was the cabins where this incident really was most felt were in something called a floodway, as opposed to a flood plain. And I will admit, I filed a bill in the first special that had this exact same language. And my constituents, many of which attend camps along the coast, brought to my attention that there's a difference in the risk profile between a camp located in a floodway and a camp located in a floodplain. About 20% of the state of Texas is in a floodplain, including most of the coast. And there are many camps along the coast, none of which would be able to operate anymore if we prohibited cabins in the floodplain. But the difference is, along the coast, cabins are not in floodways. Now, so I lay that foundation, just ask, are you familiar, have you heard of the distinction between the floodplain and the floodway?
I have not heard it expressed that way, but I have heard that there are concerns among some camps who feel like they would be inappropriately impacted by this, yes.
Yeah, and fair. And we had a hearing in the Culture, Rec, and Tourism Committee, and one of the things that I heard, and I was curious if you've heard this too, is that when a flood event happens, naturally the most dangerous situation is when it's at night and that the floodwaters rise very rapidly. I mean, would you agree that that's kind of consistent with what you've heard as well?
Yes.
Yeah. And versus a situation like we might see on the coast where a floodplain, you're in the floodplain and you get a flood that arrives over a course of days, or it's coupled with a hurricane and you've already evacuated. Have you heard as well kind of the differences of thoughts of the dangers from those two types of circumstances?
I have heard only specifically about those camps that are along lakes.
Right. Okay. That's what I also heard in the committee, that there are differences of risk profiles between camps along rivers and camps along lakes, because rivers naturally have some cabins on the floodway where basically the floodwaters are channeled at high velocity. And that's the regular floodway is where you have to discharge the water from the floodplain back into the river. And so that's where it's most dangerous. Would you consider having a discussion or about maybe changing this from floodplain to floodway?
At this point, Representative Veasey, I'm not in a position to do that. I am going with the language that's in the Senate bill.
Sure.
That they've done the vetting of, and that's what I am proposing now.
Understood. I thank you for taking time with me. I share your concern. I just wanted to bring to the body's attention, just thinking through this from a public policy perspective, of those two different terms.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Hayes, for what purpose?
Will the member yield?
General yield for questions. She yields for questions.
Thank you. Representative, I'm a board certified real estate lawyer. I review surveys and title work on a regular basis. Represent clients who have properties in flood plains. For instance, the North Texas State Fair has significant acreage in the floodplain. It's in the floodplain by 6 inches, which poses no threat to anyone. And most cities and governmental bodies have exceptions to building in floodplains by building any finished floor elevation 1 foot above the floodplain elevation. Would that address your concern?
Would what address my concern?
Building the finished floor elevation above the floodplain level. You know, if you're 40 feet below, I get it. If you're inches or feet and you're not in a high velocity area, wouldn't that address your concern?
Again, I'm not prepared to make those kinds of changes. I'm using the Senate language where they have vetted all of this. I understand that there could be some areas of exception. I'm not prepared to do that myself.
Thank you.
Move adoption.
Ms. Howard sends up an amendment. It is acceptable to the author. There is objection. This will be a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. This is on Ms. Howard's amendment to the amendment. So Mr. Darby voting aye. Meyer voting aye. Zwiener voting aye. Dowell voting aye. I'll give you time to vote. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 73 ayes and 59 nays, the amendment to the amendment is adopted. Following amendment to the amendment, the clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Zwiener.
Chair has Ms. Zwiener.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. That terrible night on July 4th and July 3rd, I was up all night watching floodwater gauges. Many of y'all know my house got drawn into the 100-year floodplain recently, and where I ride my horse, there was a horse trailer in top of one of the trees for years after the 2015 floods. I have a district that is always grateful for rain, but always nervous when that rain is heavy, because we have flash floods in the same way that the Guadalupe flash floods. Many of y'all know about the Wimberley floods that occurred in 2015. Wimberley used to be part of my district, but that same year, Onion Creek and the Buda area and the Dripping Springs area flooded, and San Marcos, Texas flooded. And so we're intimately familiar with these issues. One of the scariest things is when it floods and you don't have a way out because of a low water crossing. And so what my amendment does is it says that when DSHS is looking at approving these new camps, part of their minimum standards need to be that the camp has a safe egress where they don't have to cross a low water crossing. We certainly heard stories from these floods of folks being stuck behind low water crossings and trapped in flooding areas. And I'll also let y'all know that in 1987, while Camp Pot of Gold was trying to evacuate from the last big flood on the Guadalupe River, a bus with 10 students was washed away. We need to make sure that as we ask these camps to have evacuation plans, they are located in places where they can safely evacuate. Now, my amendment does provide a safety hatch for camps that already exist. It allows the commission to waive that requirement as long as they have adequately planned for how they're going to deal with those low water crossings, such as by changing the grade of that crossing so it's safer, or by having an active monitoring system so that they know when that crossing gets compromised and have time to act in advance. So members, I'm really grateful for this piece of legislation. I think it's doing a lot of powerful things, and I think this amendment will add to it to make sure that if these camps have to be evacuated, if a camp is having to evacuate 20, 30, 100, 200 campers, that they will be able to get those campers out to higher ground safely without getting stuck on the wrong side of a low water crossing. I move adoption.
Zwiener sends up an amendment. It is acceptable to the author. Is there objection? There is objection. This will require a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Darby voting aye. Dowell voting aye. Meyer voting aye. Have all members voted? Is Hull voting aye? Have all members voted? Meyer voting aye. Have all members voted? 74 ayes, 60 nays. The amendment to the amendment is adopted. Following amendment to the amendment, clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Johnson.
Chair has Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. One of the stories that we've also heard from folks is recognizing that some of these camps have not invested in air conditioning where these children will be housed. And so we now know that extreme weather is not only rain, but it can be excessive heat and/or it can be excessive freeze. And so this amendment simply says that the rules adopted that campers where they sleep must be equipped with either air conditioning or heat to mitigate from extreme temperatures. I believe it is acceptable to the author.
Ms. Johnson sends up an amendment to the amendment. It is acceptable to the author. Is there objection? There is objection. It's require a record vote. Clerk, ring the vote. Bell. Oh. Tell voting no. Dalla voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 52 ayes, 84 nays. The amendment to the amendment fails to adopt. Following. Members are waiting for an amendment to the amendment to be drafted. Please excuse Mr. Van Jones because of important business of the district. Motion, Mr. Reynolds. Is there objection? Chair is none, so ordered. Please go to Ms. Ordaz because of important business. On motion, Mr. Moody. Is there objection? Chair is none, so ordered. Mr. Darby to close on the amendment as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment to the amendment simply addresses the funding part of this bill, and I move adoption.
Mr. Darby sends up an amendment as amendment. It is acceptable to the author. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Anyone wish to speak on, for, against House Bill 1? Mr. Moody in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you, Mr. Darby. Thank you to everybody who's worked on this. Before I make my comments, there's a lot of words that we're going to put on paper today, and that we're going to make law today. And it's the right thing that y'all are feeling. But what we want you to know, and this body wants you to know, is that aside from all this that we do today, and we are here for it, and we are here for you, and it does not end today. Our help and our heart is with you. You know, one of my sons has a special blanket he's had since he was a baby. He still sleeps with it. He takes it with him every time we travel. One of the things that struck me after these floods was the same thing I saw when I was in Uvalde on our investigative committee, and that was seeing things like kids' blankets in places in ways that were just wrong. After the children were gone, what was left were comfort objects kids clung to in their final moments. Small shoes without the small feet to fill them. Torn, tiny clothes. These physical artifacts were found just sitting there in piles of debris, like the ghosts of our own failures as a state. Seeing that should shake us, and I know it has. Seeing that should wake us, and I know it has. Those left behind a moral challenge right here from our faces. The bottom line is that this didn't have to happen. We can't prevent every disaster, but we can do better always. We can do better before, we can do better during, and we can do better after every disaster. We have to. We have to. For these families here, and for every family we represent across this great state. Members, I'm not going to get up here on every bill today. I was honored to serve on the committee that produced this legislation. But I just want you to know that I feel the same way about each and every bill that's coming forward today and that will come forward in the future. These are each a part of our solemn duty to the families who've lost so much and to all Texans who could face that same tragedy tomorrow. I am proud to join you all in voting for it today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Harrison in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to be very, very brief. I had shown up today having studied the filed version of HB 1, and I came here with every intention of supporting House Bill 1 as filed. I think it was a good, common sense approach to handling this issue. But unfortunately, after Democrat amendment after Democrat amendment was put on the bill, this bill now has exceeded what I view as the proper role of government and may have the potential to shutter countless camps, including Christian camps that operate and have been operating in this state for a long time. We can never lose sight of the fact that government solutions are often an intent of supporting today. But with these liberal big government Democrat amendments were added to it, I can no longer do it, so I will be standing in respectful opposition to HB 1. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on, for, or against House Bill 1? Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to close on House Bill 1.
Sometimes we can be proud and sometimes we're not. Members, this bill is for Heaven's 27. In closing, I want to read their names aloud. Some of their families are in the gallery. I ask that all members and those in the gallery join me in a brief moment of silence while I read the names of the girls taken too soon. Members, I invite you, if you've lost any constituents at Camp Mystic or back home during the July 4th flooding, to come up and stand here with me. Your advocacy means just as much as mine. And parents, if you'll stand when I read your daughter's name. Mary Grace Baker. Anna Margaret Bellows. Lila Bonner. Chloe Childress. Molly DeWitt. Lucy Dillon. Catherine Ferruzio. Elizabeth Getton. Hadley Hanna. Virginia Hollis. Janie Hunt. Mary Kate Jacoby. Lainey Landry. Hannah Lawrence. Rebecca Lawrence. Kelly Ann Lytle. Sarah Marsh. Lenny McCown. Eloise Peck. Abby Pohl. Margaret Sheedy. Rennie Sesmastra. Mary Stevens. Bill Stewart. We are honored to have you. We share your grief. We support you in all ways. And with that,
Engrossment of House Bill 1. This is a record vote. I will give you times to vote for your desk. Clerk, please ring the bell. Show the speaker voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members? Mr. Moody, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I'd move that Mr. Darby's remarks on Amendment 1 to House Bill 1, the floor substitute, as well as his remarks passed to engrossment, be reduced to in the House.
Members, you've heard the chair is ordered. Mr. Raymond, for what purpose?
I'd like to move that Speaker Moody's remarks also be reduced to writing and entered into the journal.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none so ordered. Please excuse Mr. Vo because of important business in the district. On motion of Mr. Bernal, is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Mr. King for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 2, motion to suspend rules. Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D to designate as joint sponsors and co-sponsors for SB 2 all joint authors and co-authors for House Bill 2 who sign on to HB 2 before SB 2 passes the House on third reading.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none so ordered. Members, the next bill on the calendar is House Bill 2. The Senate companion is over and eligible. Chair lays out on second reading SB 2. Clerk will read the bill.
SB number 2 by Perry, relating to disaster preparedness, response, and recovery, requiring a license, authorizing fees.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, for the opportunity to lay out Senate Bill 2 today. As we all know, this July, Texas saw historic flooding that claimed the lives of 137 Texans. In response to this devastating disaster, this committee held 2 hearings together, information and recommendations of how we can better respond to future disasters. SB 2 seeks to implement some of these. First, SB 2 would create a disaster autopsy waiver. If a person dies in a declared disaster, the JP does not have to order an autopsy if the death was caused by injuries or conditions from the disaster. Before skipping an autopsy, the JP must make an effort to contact family members and let them know they have the right to request one. Next, in counties where the Justice of Peace is not a medical examiner, SB 2 requires Justice of the Peace to take training developed by DISHES and TDM on managing mass fatality events. Additionally, SB 2 creates an emergency manager's license that will be required for a person to be designated as emergency manager coordinator. This license will be issued by the Texas Commission on Fire Protection, and SB 2 gives the agency the authority to conduct background checks on individuals. SB 2 would allow a 6-month grace period for an individual to get licensed after being designated as an emergency management designee. During a disaster, the county judge or the mayor are the ones who must declare a local disaster, request state and federal help, etc. If that leader is unavailable or unreachable, local government cannot act at the exact moment when a quick decision is crucial. Under SB 2, if the county judge cannot perform their duties during a disaster, the sheriff automatically becomes the acting emergency management director. If the sheriff is unable, then the longest-serving county commissioner takes over. Each county and city must adopt written procedures outlining how this chain of command will work. SB 2 ensures that everyone knows in advance who takes charge if leadership is unavailable. SB 2 requires the implementation of the emergency management plans and drills by local interjurisdictional emergency management agencies. SB 2 creates a statewide volunteer management system that will be run by TDM and will detail the experience of experience and credentialing of volunteers that can help in a disaster and will help to manage the individuals who are able to assist state agencies and local governments during a disaster. SB 2 gives TDM the authority to conduct a background check on these individuals that would like to be listed on the volunteer management system. TDM will be able to create rules detailing the reasons why a person may be denied the ability to register on a system based on their criminal history. SB 2 allows TDM to waive the requirements of registration and volunteer databases necessary to facilitate an urgent response to disaster. SB 2 addresses drone interdiction during a natural disaster. As suggested during the disaster flood hearings, Senate Bill 2 authorizes DPS and TDM to neutralize unmanned aircraft operating in a disaster area if the aircraft is not being operated by a first responder. SB 2 gives DPS and TDM the authority to neutralize, disable, take down, or block drones flying in a disaster zone. Senate Bill 2 widens Texas disaster loan program so that the tiniest of businesses can get help. Before SB 2, only micro businesses with fewer than 20 employees could qualify, but under this bill, small businesses with up to 100 employees will also qualify. At least 50% of the funds must still go to the micro businesses that are affected. During the post-flood hearings, it came to light that the Upper Guadalupe River Authority declined to pursue financing from the Texas Water Development Board that would have provided a $50,000 grant and a $950,000 loan, zero-interest loan, payable over 30 years. They declined to accept that funding, and they did not purchase a flash flood warning system. To ensure the Upper Guadalupe River Authority's priorities are better aligned, Senate Bill 2 requires the UGRA to undergo a limited review by the Texas Sunset Commission. To better equip the state and local emergency managers to make weather-related decisions, SB 2 creates a meteorological working group. Finally, SB 2 requires DISH's and TDM to create a mass fatality rapid response team that immediately responds to a disaster to assess the geographic area where an event occurs. Members, this bill does a lot, and I hope you read it, but it's not the end. The Disaster Preparedness Committee is empowered, thanks to Speaker Burrows, till January 27. I expect we're going to have a deep dive of an interim study to address this bill and many others that we're not going to take up in this special session. These bills that we're taking, this bill and the next bill we'll take up, they're not going to prevent the next disaster. Nobody can tell when the next fire, flood, hurricane, school shooting, Mr. McLaughlin, is going to take place. But this state, we've said it all morning long, the locals can do better, we can do better. Being prepared and being ready to respond to a disaster is what we owe the citizens of Texas. And that's what Senate Bill 2 seeks to do. With that, I would
Mr. Speaker?
Ms. Collier, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
The gentleman yields.
Well, thank you for that thorough layout. I appreciate that. I just have a few clarifying questions that I wanted to give you the full time to do the layout because you did get to one of the issues that I want to address. You talked about mass fatality. What is the definition of a mass fatality event?
You know, that is a very good question, and that question came up in the committee. And actually, the definition depends on the population of where the event occurred. You know, in a city like I live in, 20 people would be considered a mass casualty event. Where you live, maybe it's 20,000. I don't know, but from a population standpoint, the definition depends on where the disaster's at.
And so, is that written in statute?
That is in the under TDM's rules. So that is not in statute, but that is the way TDM assesses mass fatalities.
Okay, so then it's in the rules. So that means TDM could actually modify the rules to reduce those numbers if necessary, if it's appropriate for what qualifies as a mass fatality event. It's not a statute.
Right.
Okay, so that means that they can modify it.
If I understand you correctly, I don't know why they would play with numbers in a mass fatality, if that's what you're asking. I don't think I'm understanding your question.
It's not a trick question.
No, I'm trying to understand why.
Well, if it's a rule,
Right.
that
But
means they can modify their own rules.
To be clear, when that question came up in testimony, that was the answer from TDM. That the number it takes for a mass fatality event depends on where the disaster is. And I do not believe there's a hard number in statute.
And so that means that they don't have to come back to us, the legislature, to ask us to modify it. They can modify it on their own if they needed to.
I suppose that would be true.
Okay. So does it include, the definition include active shooter events or mass fatality events related to gun violence?
It would cover all mass fatalities regardless of the cause.
So that would be yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then how many counties have a justice of the peace without a medical examiner?
Oh, and I think, Ms. Collier, and somebody can please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's only 6 medical examiners in the state of Texas. Is that correct?
Well, I'm seeing 14, so maybe
Okay.
So that means 240 counties do not have a medical
That is
examiner.
correct.
Okay. So given that the vast majority of Texas counties operate without a medical examiner, I want to be certain that the training justices of the peace receive under this bill is sufficient. So Senate Bill 2 is the same as House Bill 2, right? You just substituted it because it got here faster.
That is correct.
Okay. So is the training in this bill in line with the training that medical examiners receive?
No.
It's
no.
not.
Well, the training hadn't been developed yet.
Okay. Will it be?
This will be developed between DISHs and TDM. The training that we will require justice of peace justice of the peace to take. So no, I would say it won't be the same as medical examiner, but there will probably be some elements to that training in it. But the agencies will be tasked under this bill to develop that training.
So based on your understanding, would the training, or should the training be make the justices of the peace as prepared as a medical examiner to respond to mass fatality events?
I don't believe the intent is to take the place or make them the same as a licensed medical examiner, but in lieu of that medical examiner, they need better training.
But will they be as prepared to handle a mass fatality event as a medical examiner would?
I think we could answer that question after we see the training and the implementation of this bill.
So, but you want them to be as prepared to handle
I want them to be better prepared than they currently are. But I'm not trying to make a justice of the peace be an actual medical examiner either, and that's not what the bill calls for.
But aren't they? Isn't that what they're required to do if there's no medical examiner?
They are required to pronounce people dead, order autopsies, do some of the functions of a medical examiner, and I do not have the entire list of a medical examiner's duties in front of me, but the duties would overlap in some cases.
Okay. In your bill, a justice of the peace who does not complete the required training could be removed from office, but that's not the case for the other elected officials who are required to take the training. How does your bill hold other elected officials accountable for not taking this training?
Well, I'm not telling the other elected officials to take mass fatality training. That section for the justice of peace is about justice of peace.
But who else has to take the mass fatality? Does TDM? Do they take it?
TDM will organize and develop the training, Ms. Collier.
But who else is going to take any type of training for the?
For the mass fatality, it's the JP's responsibility to pronounce death or order an autopsy. Why would we make other local county officials take it? I'm confused.
Well, I'm just asking, who else is required to do
I don't know
these
what
services?
you're asking. The point is, what I'm asking for is the justice of the peace to take the training.
Okay, and then they can be penalized for not taking it?
Absolutely.
And what is the penalty?
They can be removed from office.
Okay, and does that require a constitutional amendment or anything?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so then if they fail to take this training, which we don't know the hours or the extent, they could be removed from office.
We're asking DISHs and TDM to develop training. The training does not exist currently. This will take time to stand this bill up and to develop the trainings. Nothing is happening tomorrow, and as I said in the beginning, this work is not done. this disaster committee will continue to meet, and we will continue to look at the trainings that are being developed and how they get implemented. And when if changes need made, the committee will make them, and this body will make them. But for now, this is our starting point.
I think that it's wonderful. I believe that providing more education opportunities for our elected officials is excellent. I just want to make sure that there's parity in punishment. But I do appreciate this bill. I will be supporting it.
Thank you.
I like the concept. Thank you.
Mr. Canales, for what purpose?
The gentleman yields for
The
question.
gentleman yield for questions.
Absolutely.
Gentleman yields.
First, thank you for bringing this bill. I will be supporting it. I do have a concern. I was sitting back there listening to your layout about the neutralization of drones. Over your left shoulder, there's a press box, and the press is brought, and the press brings light to many events, which has led to funding, a lot of fundraising, awareness for the public.
One second, Mr. Canales.
Members, please take your conversations outside the rail.
And I'll speak louder, too.
No, thank you.
So over your left shoulder, there's a press box. The press in this last event brought lots of awareness, national awareness to what was happening, and that caused people to raise funds, caused people to, out of the goodness of their hearts. But it also allowed us to see what was happening on the ground through the use of press drones to actually cover this area. Would TDM and the emergency management be able to neutralize certified or registered press drones? Would they be able to be taken out of the air under this bill?
I believe they would, and the reason that came up was during testimony, there was an incident where a drone actually hit a Black Hawk helicopter. Now, to be fair, the drone was being operated by a first responder, but that concern came up because there was drones everywhere. It just happened to be that one that ran into the helicopter. I think if during certain times of an event, especially when the first response happens, having a controlled airspace by first responders is necessary. As the rescue effort, such as in the July 4th floods, went on through the days, I think there's certainly room for more people to fly them. But what we ended up with, particularly in Kerrville, is we had so many iPhone camera crews down there flying drones that weren't credentialed press.
Sure.
And this bill, in my mind, isn't seeking to stop press.
Who makes the determination of that window?
Under this bill, it would be TDM and DPS.
So they could indefinitely say closed airspace.
They can, and they do that all the time now. I mean, as far as like on actual aircraft, if somebody's flying a helicopter in to help with the disaster, they have to have permission to come in that airspace. But in the drone case, they just kind of pop up.
Thank you for answering the question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vidal, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Absolutely.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you. Before I start, did you get a chance to finish your layout? I don't want to mess that up.
Yes, it's all done.
Okay, copy that. So my question, which many people have brought up, is about the volunteer issues, and not the issue, sorry, the volunteer stuff in this language here. One of them that kind of stood out to me, it creates a definition for spontaneous volunteer. And then if you go to page 16, line 4, there's a paragraph there, and on line 7 it says, must ensure the spontaneous volunteer is registered with the volunteer management system. I'll wait for you. Yeah, page 16, line 7.
Line 7. Okay, I found it. Go ahead.
Okay, it says that basically the local government or the division of the state agency must ensure the spontaneous volunteers register with the volunteer management system. And the concern that I have is we had 12,000 roughly, I don't know what the actual number was, but somebody said 17,000 volunteers show up. Does that mean that every person that shows up on the river in this situation that would get yanked off and then have to go do, what does it say here real quick? Let me read that again. Go have to register with the volunteer management system while they're doing that?
So right now, as you well know, TDM already has a volunteer management system, but there's no mechanism to require volunteers to register within the system.
Yeah.
I believe this is an attempt to put some teeth in the volunteer management system. And in your particular disaster, you had 17,000 volunteers come in. Travis County had thousands of volunteers. All the counties that were affected had volunteers. And as you heard in testimony, a lot of this is strategic. You know, when I came to your district, you had, just like when I had a wildfire, we had volunteers sitting because they didn't know where to go or what to do, and nobody knew to tell them. You know, this isn't supposed to be punitive, Mr. Verdell.
Yeah.
This is supposed to get, if you're an electrician and TDM knows you're an electrician, they can, you know, send you to this place or that place. If you're just a day laborer, they send you to this place. And it's also a protection mechanism to know who is going through private property. And as you well know, even in this horrible tragedy, there was cases of looting. There was people violating private property acts, tearing property up that wasn't already damaged. This all came, you sat through the testimony as well as I did. That's where this comes from. I don't believe anybody's trying to be punitive to Texans helping Texans or those that come from other states. Every disaster we've had, the volunteers are what gets Texas back on its feet. But I do think being able to organize the volunteer staff is a more efficient use of their time.
Yes, sir.
That's the point. But I get your point.
Yeah.
And as you recall, the original version of this actually had like fingerprinting language and that kind of stuff.
I do appreciate that changing on
we
there.
removed that and we made it, and it actually doesn't require. I mean, you're not. If a volunteer chooses not to register, TDM isn't going to make them. But what they'd like to do is expand that database, and particularly when we talk about what you and I talked about earlier, I don't have a better word for it, but the chronic volunteers, the Samaritan groups, they come to your flood, they came to my wildfire, they go to Miss Thompson's hurricane.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Can I request an extension?
Members, you've heard the motion to extend time. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The gentleman's time is extended.
Thanks, Speaker.
So to finish my thought, Mr. Verdell, a large percentage of the volunteer groups that come in, they're already registered with TDM, and they are very effective because when they hit the ground, TDM knows who they are, what their skill set is, and knows how to put them in the game.
Yep. Okay, I appreciate that. The one other question I had was, it says that TDM may do background checks on that, which I think has a place. Who pays for that background check? Would the volunteer have to pay for that, or would TDM? Or
no, TDM would pay for it. There's no charge to be a volunteer.
Yeah, copy that. Okay. And during the interim, I know we're going to be meeting with the special committee. Would you be willing to work more on this with me?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
100. You know this, and for the members that are listening, whether you're on the committee or you're not on the committee, or your bill idea gets taken up in this special session, this committee is not done. We're going to take it serious, and we're going to continue to work on disaster mitigation, and certainly a response to your home in the floods, but disaster mitigation across the state. This committee is important, and we will see meaningful legislation in the 27th session come out of this. So absolutely, your ideas are worthy, and I want to take them up.
All right. Thank you, Chairman King. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Darby.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment is about making sure that people we already require to be trained and licensed in emergency management have a voice when critical infrastructure is built in their counties. numerous 765 kV transmission lines, more commonly known as extra high voltage, the largest in the country, are being built in areas that just experienced significant flooding, with more lines to come. Those lines involve towers up to 140 feet and span several football fields. One of the proposed routes runs along the Llano and the San Saba rivers that rose more than 30 feet during the recent flooding. Right now, the only people who can have legal standing to weigh in at the PUC are landowners of those with structures within 300 yards of the line. That excludes the very people responsible for managing disasters, and that's our emergency management coordinators. This amendment simply gives them the ability to provide input if a line is proposed in a 100-year floodplain or near riparian zones on the Frio, Guadalupe, San Saba, Llano, and Devils River. They won't control the decision, but they will be allowed to present local knowledge and recommendations to the PUC. This is about public safety, common sense, and making sure local expertise is at the table when we put critical infrastructure in the path of flooding or other disasters. And I believe it's acceptable to the author. Move adoption.
Mr. Darby sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none, and the amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Goodwin.
The chair recognizes Ms. Goodwin to explain the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, members, this amendment strengthens our mass fatality rapid response teams. It ensures they include experts who can help with forecasting, data analysis, and warning coordination. It directs TDM to document which National Weather Service offices in Texas have a warning coordination meteorologist, a service coordination hydrologist, a development and operations hydrologist, and a science and operations officer. TDM would then make sure these experts are part of the rapid response teams in their regions. Members, in a mass fatality disaster, we must use every tool and every expert we have. These scientists play a key role forecasting severe weather, coordinating public awareness, and supporting first responders with the latest technology. Including them means more accurate data, quicker warnings, and better decisions. And better decisions can save lives. We are fortunate to have some of the best science and technology in the world here in Texas. Let's make sure we put it to work when Texans need it the most. Move adoption.
Chair recognizes Mr. King in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I appreciate that seeing this amendment, but the fact is the National Weather Service is embedded with TDM already. They have a meteorologist on staff, and they take weather updates constantly from the National Weather Service. So I don't see the necessity of this amendment, and I'm going to move to table.
Ms. Goodwin, close.
Members, if TDM already has staff in place, that's great, but this amendment simply makes sure that all of those with the expertise throughout the state we are utilizing their expertise. So this would go beyond what TDM already has in place, and I move adoption.
Ms. Goodwin sends up an amendment. Mr. King moves to table. The question is on the motion to table. If you're in favor of the amendment, vote nay. If you're opposed to the amendment, vote aye. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Goodwin voting nay. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Ms. Fairley voting aye. Show Ms. Zwiener voting nay. Show Mr. Verdell voting aye. Have all voted? There being 87 ayes, 44 nays, the motion prevails. Following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Howard.
The chair recognizes Ms. Howard to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment would create a reimbursement grant program for counties or municipalities that own helicopters that are used to perform rescue services. It would allow local governments to be reimbursed up to $750,000 a year for costs associated with their emergency operations. Currently, these costs are paid for by local taxpayers. And I'm not just referring, as we're having a discussion here, that maybe they'll go to the back mic and ask me about TDEM asking them to come in. This is for any rescue operation that they do. Travis County's Starflight program is an example of what we're talking about. Starflight is the only 24/7 year-round aerial emergency medical service in Texas that performs highly specialized emergency response services such as emergency medical transport, still and swift water rescue, high-angle rescue, fire suppression aerial reconnaissance, and law enforcement and public safety assistance. Based in Austin, its area of operations include Travis County and 19 surrounding counties, each with a 75-mile radius. Each aircraft is staffed with a pilot, a nurse, and a paramedic. Although Starflight is allowed to seek reimbursement from patients for the helicopter EMS services it provides, Travis County taxpayers subsidize the bulk of its activities, including all its search and rescue and fire suppression efforts, to the tune of more than $7 million a year. As a reimbursement grant program, this amendment would simply recognize the actual costs incurred outside of Travis County and the intrinsic value of the Starflight operation as part of the state's emergency preparedness disaster response capacity. Further, it would create opportunities for other cities and counties to expand or create similar emergency operations and services if they chose to do so. This amendment would only create a grant program. It would not appropriate the state funding. That would have to be done through a future appropriations bill, or once the grant program exists, it could be done through budget execution or the governor's disaster transfer authority. This program is perfectly aligned with the goals of Senate Bill 2, which is to create and implement statewide policies that will prepare our state to handle future natural disasters. I move adoption.
Ms. Howard sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Reynolds.
The chair recognizes Mr. Reynolds to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I appreciate what Chairman King is doing. This amendment is a simple amendment that would require counties to update their minimum building codes to the 2018 standards. One of the recommendations that was included in the Texas Water Development Board's 2024 State Flood Plan was adopting and strengthening statewide building codes to ensure that Texas infrastructure is more resilient in the face of extreme weather events like flooding. Many cities in Texas have already adopted 2018 or higher standards. This amendment just ensures that all counties in Texas are operating at the same or similar standards. I move adoption.
Mr. King, in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I've not seen this simple amendment. It looks like a 9-page bill to me. I don't think it fits in what Senate Bill 2 is trying to do. Therefore, I move the table.
Mr. Reynolds to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the recommendations that we're trying to implement is to ensure that we prepare for extreme weather events. And I respect that I haven't visited with Chairman King about this, but this certainly will help. I do appreciate the good faith that he articulated earlier with his conversation with Representative Riddell, and I hope that during the interim that we will look at more collaborative ways to ensure that we're doing everything possible to prepare and protect our citizens in the state. And with that, I will withdraw this amendment.
The amendment is withdrawn. Back it up, members. The motion to table is withdrawn and the amendment is withdrawn. Does anyone wish to speak on, for, or against House Bill 2? Senate Bill 2. Hearing none, the chair recognizes Mr. King to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, in closing, I just remind you that many of you have signed on to House Bill 2, and we've taken up Senate Bill 2. If you would like to be a co-author of Senate Bill 2, please get signed up before third reading. Move passage.
The question occurs on passage to third reading of Senate Bill 2. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Mr. LaHood voting aye. Have all voted. There being 130 ayes, 4 nays, Senate Bill 2 is passed to third reading. Mr. King moves to lay House Bill 2 on the table subject to call. Is there objection? The chair has none and the motion is adopted. The chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 3 by King, relating to the interoperability of emergency communication equipment and infrastructure in this state, including the creation and operation of the Texas Interoperability Council, a grant program administered by the council, and the purchase of certain public safety radio communication systems.
The chair recognizes Mr. King to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 3 today. As you know, my district saw almost 2 million acres burned last year in the largest wildfire in Texas history. Following the fire, I served as chair of the investigative committee on the Panhandle wildfires. Through hours of testimony, one thing became abundantly clear. Our first responders have to have a better way to communicate. Today, while we're still mourning the loss of 137 fellow Texans, including 27 little girls, I stand before you as the chair of the Disaster Preparedness and Flooding Committee, talking to you once again about the need for our first responders to have a better way to communicate. Being interoperable means, on average, in any disaster, first responders will spend the first 36 hours trying to achieve interoperability when time matters most. Over the last year, I've worked with various stakeholders to develop a plan to create an interoperability communication system that would allow first responders to work together more effectively when responding to emergency events. House Bill 3 is just the first step in this process. The bill creates the Texas Interoperability Council and would be charged with developing and coordinating the implementation of a statewide plan for interoperability emergency communications. The council would administer a grant program to help local governments purchase equipment or infrastructure that could be used in a statewide system. With a system developed under this bill, we would create cohesiveness amongst departments from multiple areas, as well as cohesive between all disciplines of first responders. To obtain grants, first responders would be required to receive proper training on the equipment, not only to better understand the tools, but to improve coordination amongst the different emergency management services. In addition, House Bill 3 will require governments to get approval for any public safety communication system to ensure interoperability statewide initially. This approval will be through the Office of the Governor, and beginning in 2027, the responsibility will be transferred to the Interoperability Council. My goal is to ensure that every first responder that put their life on the line when we need them most has the emergency communication tools they need to be safe and keep those around them safe as well. With that, I will be glad to take questions.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Tinderholt, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
The gentleman yields.
So when we had this bill last time, there were some issues that I think were resolved, but I want to clarify as I look through the bill.
Yes, sir.
There was $500 million, $500 million. This time, is it correct that it's a $50 million one-time payment?
That is true. This is not an ongoing appropriation. This money is to stand up the council. We expect 2 years to stand the council up, and then the build out after that. The money will be held in trust at the comptroller's office. We're not backloading another state agency. TDM would be the chair of the committee. All first responding disciplines will be part of the council, but the money will be held at the comptroller's office, so we're not inflating the budget of one single state agency.
So it went from 500 million, a half a billion, to 50 million. Second question was, I had some serious concerns last time about Open Meetings Acts, and you and I talked a little, and I want to briefly go through that because there was a lot of dialogue last time we had this bill. So the Open Meetings Act is indeed going to apply with this council, is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. There is a provision now that allows the council, when they're dealing with national security issues, for instance, to go into a closed meeting. But we did apply the Open Meetings Act to this.
Thank you for doing that, because I think that that's really important when we're spending taxpayer dollars to adhere to those. And the last question is, you and I talked a few moments ago about the helicopters and the communication with the people on the ground controlling the aircraft, and that they were having a tough time talking to the air traffic controllers. They were having a hard time talking to DPS, for instance, Coast Guard and Army talking to DPS. Will this bill potentially solve those issues and allow it to still be encrypted so they can communicate between DPS, Coast Guard, Army, fire, rescue?
That is the goal of the bill, Mr. Tinderholt. When you have, particularly which wasn't national security per se in Mr. Verdell's situation, but we heard testimony where his county, Kirk County, spent $7 million of taxpayer money upgrading the radios. But they were still 36 hours from being interoperable because all the first responders had to sync their radios to that radio. The goal of this council is to solve interoperability for counties, but it's also, we have military bases, we have national security issues that all face interoperability challenges, and my friend Sheriff Louderback standing here with me because he knows this to be true. That's the goal of the council, is to bring everybody in together, but not give anybody exact control of the money. So we force these agencies to all work together to solve exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I talked to folks on all sides concerning the helicopters and the air traffic controllers and the ground controllers, and I think this is potentially going to solve it. I want to say thank you for making these changes. It's put me in a position where I'm going to vote yes on this bill, so thank you for making all those changes.
Thank you, Mr. Tinderholt. I believe there is an amendment.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by King.
Chair recognizes Mr. King to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment would encourage the Interoperability Council to consider using existing emergency communication systems and consider making the condition of a grant program that the recipient is an IPAWS alerting authority. This is permissible. Move adoption.
Mr. King sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by King.
Chair recognizes Mr. King to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment would allow the purchase of communications equipment without approval of the governor's office and subsequently the Interoperability Council if the equipment is compliant with the Project 25 compliance assessment program administered by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Move adoption.
Mr. King sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted. Anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against House Bill 3? Chair recognizes Mr. Verdell to speak for the bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as you know, I voted against the original session, the 89th session version of this bill. I want to say thank you to our Chairman King for fixing one of the concerns that we had, which was transparency. Before I finish, I want to tell you a story. So Friday, July 4th was the flood. Going into that night, into July 5th, we were out on the river on Highway 39, and I was talking to law enforcement officers from other counties who had come in to help. And one of them, while they were clearing houses, showed me the radio, and he held it up, and he said, "This radio is useless. I can't even communicate with the guy down the street from me." And it was at that point that I realized we do have issues with interoperability. I don't know if we're going to find the solution, but I think we should at least try to find the solution. Sorry, can you hear me better? All right, and I think that's why I'm going to support this bill, is I think that we should at least try to find a solution for the interoperability. Thank you all.
Chair recognizes Mr. Louderback.
Members, let me try to express how huge and monumental HB 3 actually does. It puts us on a course of operable situations with radios and interoperability. So most of you don't know that this has been a long-time issue of major consequence to our state. It has been a very fleeting moment as we try to get every agency in public safety kind of on the same page and the ship going in the same direction. So this bill will do that. I highly support this bill. I hope you will too, because it means a great deal to public safety. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. King to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as I said, this is the first step in the process of achieving interoperability. Some of you may not even know what the term means, and it's because the disaster hadn't hit your district yet. But when you get into the middle of your disaster, you're going to hear this term over and over and over. And once again, when we have great state resources with all our state agencies, our counties do a great job, but when the cavalry shows up and Texans are helping Texans, waiting 36 hours before they can communicate with each other costs lives. I would appreciate your support on this bill. I move passage.
The question occurs on passage to engrossment of House Bill 3. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Mr. Verdell voting aye. Show Colonel Wilson voting aye. Show Ms. Plessa voting aye. Show Ms. Perez voting aye. Show Dr. Lalani voting aye. Have all voted. There being 134 ayes, 1 nay, House Bill 3 is passed to engrossment. Members, the next bill on the calendar is House Bill 5. The Senate companion is over and eligible. The chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 5. The clerk will read the bill.
SB number 5 by Huffman, relating to making supplemental appropriations for disaster relief and giving direction and adjustment authority regarding those appropriations.
The chair recognizes Dr. Bonin to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this legislation deals with the funding element of the tragic flooding that we experienced on July the 4th in this state. I'm going to go through very quickly the 4 items that are in the bill, and then perhaps give you just a little bit of background so you can understand from a fiscal standpoint where we are. So the first and largest item is $240 million to the governor's disaster grants, and this is funding that we would typically use following a disaster in the disaster response. On average, that's about $150 million each biennium. In the present biennium, which will end at the end of this month, the new biennium begins September the 1st, with the wildfires, we actually went beyond that. And so we had to do a supplemental appropriation of $64 million just to make sure that we fully funded the responses for the current biennium. And then we had put another $150 million for the biennium to start in the September the 1st. So with our commitment to do the local match and the FEMA debris removal, and then knowing that we're at the start of a biennium where we're going to unfortunately have other weather events or other disasters that may occur, we want to make sure we're adequately capitalized, and that's the $240 million that goes into the disaster grant program in the governor's office. The second item is $50 million to provide grants to counties that are under the disaster declaration from the July 4th flooding so that they may implement sirens, rain gauges, and other weather monitoring equipment. There is another $50 million which is contingent upon the final passage of the bill that we just heard for emergency interoperability of communications. And then there's $28 million that was the result of testimony that we heard on the disaster committee, where meteorologists testified that should we have better data with respect to monitoring our weather, particularly in West Texas, and as weather comes across from Mexico into the state of Texas, we'd have more accurate and more timely forecasting, and then be able to better warn people when a weather event was going to occur. So that is what is in this legislation. Are there any amendments? No. I move passage.
Does anyone wish to speak on, for, or against Senate Bill 5? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Dr. Bonin to close on the bill.
I close.
The question occurs on passage to third reading of Senate Bill 5. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Slauson voting aye. Show Mr. Alders voting aye. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Mr. McLaughlin voting aye. Have all voted. There being 136 ayes, 0 nays, Senate Bill 5 is passed to third reading. Dr. Bonin moves to lay House Bill 5 on the table subject to call. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The motion is adopted. The chair lays out on second reading House Bill 20. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 20 by Darby, relating to certain measures to prevent and reduce fraudulent charitable solicitations and theft during disasters, including establishing a voluntary accreditation program for disaster relief organizations, creating a criminal offense, increasing a criminal penalty, providing a civil cause of action.
The chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 20 is the Disaster Scam Response Act. This is a comprehensive, targeted approach to protect Texans from criminals who prey on our citizens during their most vulnerable moments. We've all seen how the devastation disasters bring, and they bring out the best in Texans, but we've also seen the predators who follow, exploiting survivors and generous donors to personal gain. Chief Nim Kidd with TDM testified that volunteers, quote unquote, in Kerr County have demanded and aggressively demanded thousands of dollars to clean up debris from victims, and right now scammers have and are calling grieving parents claiming to have their missing children, demanding ransom payments. This bill tries to address that. We create public education and transparency. We create a fraud hotline. We assess criminal penalties and civil remedies. And members, this is going to be one of the strongest bills in the country combating disaster scams. And I believe it's tailored to go after those preying on Texans for profit. And I have two perfecting amendments.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Darby.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the amendment.
Members, this amendment is a clarification amendment. It just adds the governor's Texas Nonprofit Council to the list of entities the Attorney General shall consult with when making rules under Article 2 of the bill. Move adoption.
Mr. Darby sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none, and the amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Darby.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the amendment.
Members, this amendment strengthens 20 by addressing concerns raised by nonprofit stakeholders and law enforcement partners. Changes make or to the accreditation program. They make it more transparent, protect the privacy of participating organizations, and add accountability to how the Attorney General's disaster fraud hotline is managed. And with that, I move adoption.
Mr. Darby sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none, and the amendment is adopted. Does anyone wish to speak on, for, or against House Bill 20? Chair recognizes Mr. Darby to close on the bill.
Thank you, members. This has been a good day. We're trying to address some of the concerns that have developed this summer, and I think this is a good start. With that, I move adoption. Move passage.
The question occurs on passage to engrossment of House Bill 20. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Verdell voting aye. Have all voted? There being 136 ayes, 0 nays, House Bill 20 is passed to engrossment. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 22. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 22 by Bonin, relating to the authority of the Comptroller to provide funding for the deployment and operation of certain emergency communication equipment.
Chair recognizes Dr. Bonin to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this legislation would do is that in working with the Comptroller's Office, we have identified that of the $1.5 billion that the state has committed to the Broadband Infrastructure Fund, there is currently a remaining balance of about $1.36 billion, and this would make the fund eligible to be used for expenses with respect to emergency communications, and it would authorize grants, low interest rate loans, financial incentives for emergency communications, and interoperable programs. So it's technology neutral, and it is an opportunity for us to then have a source of funding. It does not make an appropriation. It does not require that these grants be funded, but it creates an allowable use for some of the money in the Broadband Infrastructure Fund for these purposes.
Does any member wish to speak on, for, or against House Bill 22? Chair recognizes Dr. Bonin to close on the bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Moody, for what purpose?
The gentleman yield for a few
The
questions.
gentleman yield for questions.
Happy to yield for
Gentleman
questions.
yields.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. I appreciate the time. And I just want to reiterate a conversation that we had in committee in the first called and then the second called on this particular bill. As you stated, there's no new money here. This is the pot of money that exists for the broadband infrastructure. That's correct?
That's correct.
And so we're adding essentially new categories that can draw down the funds.
An allowable use.
Correct. That better term of art, allowable use. And so it wasn't really a concern that I had, but after taking the testimony that we took in the hearings, and you served on the same committee, we gather an enormous amount of information. Specifically, Texas Water Development Board has identified every potential place where we could help with flood mitigation, all these other things. I think this is an enormous amount of time, energy, and effort that we put into looking at these and highlighting high risks and how we could start to mitigate that over time, right?
That's correct.
And so I know that this bill doesn't speak specifically to flood mitigation. We're talking about this specific type of infrastructure. However, and I don't think there was a way to legislatively make agencies work together, but the thing that I want to continue to impress upon, I've talked to the Comptroller's Office, and I've talked to the Water Development Board, because this is a grant process, right? You apply and you go through the grant process.
That's right.
And
well, grants. There's also
and low interest loans.
Low interest loans.
Yep.
So they have some other financial instruments.
Yeah. So
to
it's a financial tool that can be used, and there's a scoring metric and a rubric and all that, and the only thing that I would like to do, because I don't think it's right to legislatively prescribe how that happens, but it's just a concern that I have, and that's why I want to voice it again here, and I appreciate your willingness to continue to have this conversation with me, because it's the third time now that I've made you do it. But I just think it is incumbent upon the comptroller, when they set up these rules, and this is now a new and allowable use, that they somehow find a way to look at the highlights that we have in some of these flood plans to identify and maybe score things differently so that we're deploying resources to places that are in higher need. And that's really, I know we don't have legislative intent anymore and that's gone, but I just, if you would commit to me that we can have that conversation once we pass this bill with the comptroller's office so that we can find some way that we can make these systems work together.
I think how I would say it is that we want to access the best available data so that we get the best return on investment from these funds. So when we're prioritizing requests for grants or loans or whatever it may be, we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the expertise and the data that's available to say, hey, this is a really high-risk area, and this is a project that could really do a lot to mitigate and prevent further loss of life and property, so that we have the most informed decision making that we can. At the same time, I don't want to get multiple agencies involved in the grant process, in which case it'd be really cumbersome to even get decisions made.
No, and so I'm not trying to bog things down. I just know that it was eye-opening to me in this process how much information and how much data we gather and how little we plug that into other systems that are, like you said, you're unleashing the power of the state here to do good things and to fund infrastructure. I just think that we need to make sure that we're doing it with data, like data informed. And if we have, like we already have it, so how do we figure out the best way to make those systems talk in a way that's not cumbersome? We all hate bureaucracy, and part of our charge was to eliminate that. But I think the best way to do it is to figure out how to utilize the data we have to inform those funding decisions. And I appreciate you taking the questions today.
No problem.
Thank you.
Move passage.
The question occurs on passage to engrossment of House Bill 22. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Plessa voting aye. Show Mr. Alcott voting aye. Show Mr. Harless voting aye. Have all voted. There being 135 ayes and 1 nay, House Bill 22 is passed to engrossment. Members, don't go anywhere. We're going to adjourn in a few minutes to start a new legislative day. The following bill on first reading and referral to committee.
HB number 18 by Shaheen, relating to the making or acceptance of political contributions by and the making of political expenditures by a member of the legislature during certain absences from the state, authorizing a civil penalty. Refer to the Committee on Elections.
Mr. Darby moves that the House stand adjourned until 12:30 p.m. today. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The House stands adjourned.
The House will come to order. Members, please register. Have all members registered? A quorum is present. Mr. Darby moves to excuse those members on this legislative day who were excused on the previous legislative day. Is there any objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Mr. Darby moves to defer the reading and referral of bills until the end of today's business. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. The chair lays out on third reading HB 1. Clerk will read the bill.
HB number 1 by Darby, relating to resident youth camp emergency plans and preparedness, authorizing a civil penalty.
The chair recognizes Mr. Darby to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm so proud of this body. I think we've done a good thing today. We visited with the families. They are very pleased with our response. And they wanted me to convey to you their appreciation for the support that you've given for this initiative. So with that and our congratulations to this body, I move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of HB 1. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Mr. Bell of Kaufman voting aye. Show Mr. Ashby voting aye. Show Mr. Metcalf voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all voted? Have all members voted? There being 135 ayes and 1 nay, HB 1 is finally passed, subject to Article 3, Section 49A of the Texas Constitution. The chair lays out on third reading Senate Bill 2. The clerk will read the bill.
SB number 2 by Perry, relating to disaster preparedness, response, and recovery, requiring a license, authorizing fees.
The chair recognizes Mr. King to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 2 is a disaster preparedness bill, and I believe there is an amendment.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Buckley.
Chair recognizes Dr. Buckley to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, added in subsection B1, this amendment simply strikes or Frio River and substitutes Frio River, Lampasas River, or Salado Creek, and I believe it's acceptable to the author.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Weiner, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for some questions?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Thank you so much, Representative Buckley. I'm sorry, we just wanted to kind of understand the further impact of this language in the bill as currently drafted. Could you break this apart for us?
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about emergency managers weighing in on the 765 kV power lines, it simply adds Lampasas River and Salado Creek to the list of waterways that were in the Darby Amendment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Buckley sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. Is there any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Chair hears none, and the amendment is adopted. Chair recognizes Mr. King to close on the bill as amended.
Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of SB 2. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Ms. Flores voting aye. Have all members voted? Show Mr. LaHood voting aye. Have all members voted? There being 132 ayes and 4 nays, SB 2 is finally passed. The chair lays out on third reading HB 3. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 3 by King, relating to the interoperability of emergency communication equipment and infrastructure in this state, including the creation and operation of the Texas Interoperability Council, a grant program administered by the council, and the purchase of certain public safety radio communication systems.
The chair recognizes Mr. King to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 3 creates the Interoperability Council. Move passage.
The question occurs on final passage of HB 3. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Mr. Berry voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 136 ayes and 1 nay, HB 3 is finally passed. The chair recognizes Mr. King for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to suspend House Rule 8, Section 5D, to designate as joint sponsors and co-sponsors for SB 5 all joint authors and co-authors for HB 5 who sign on to HB 5 before SB 5 passes the House on third reading.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. So ordered. Is Dr. Bonin on the floor of the House?
Chair lays out on third reading SB 5. Clerk will read the bill.
SB number 5 by Huffman, relating to making supplemental appropriations for disaster relief and giving direction and adjustment authority regarding those appropriations.
Chair has Dr. Bonner to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the supplemental appropriation bill that we just discussed. I move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of SB 5. This is a record vote. Clerk ring the bell. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Being 137 ayes and 0 nays, SB 5 is finally passed subject to Article 3, Section 49A, Texas Constitution. Chair lays out on third reading HB 20. Clerk read the bill.
HB number 20 by Darby, relating to certain measures to prevent and reduce fraudulent charitable solicitations and theft during disasters, including establishing a voluntary accreditation program for disaster relief organizations, creating a criminal offense, increasing criminal penalty, providing a civil cause of action.
Chair recognizes Mr. Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is simply the Disaster Scam Response Act. Heard earlier this morning. I move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of House Bill 20. Record vote. Clerk ring the bell. Have all members voted? 135 ayes and 0 nays. House Bill 20 is finally passed. Chair lays out on third reading House Bill 22. Clerk read the bill.
HB number 22 by Bonin, relating to the authority of the Comptroller to provide funding for the deployment and operation of certain emergency communication equipment.
Chair has Dr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation expands the allowable uses of the Broadband Infrastructure Fund to include emergency communications and interoperability. I move passage.
Question occurs on final passage of House Bill 22. Record vote. Clerk ring the bell. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 136 ayes and 1 nay. House Bill 22 is finally passed. Members, that concludes our business on the floor today. Members, we do have a few more motions before we recess. So for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just curious, is the speaker's desk clear?
Almost.
Okay.
Very close.
Thank you.